Aquí.
Yeah, the selection of these sectors is just incidental. It is basically coming together of a group of organizations who are working in the field of more people-centered, pro-people, alternative technology-based development work.
Farmers are finding agriculture, farming unviable. They are giving it up as a livelihood, and as you know, still over 62% of the people are dependent on agriculture. Agriculture is a source of livelihood for such a large number of people. And if just less than 30% is left for the peasantry and agricultural labor, the landless, to share between themselves, obviously incomes are not sufficient. Then they tend to migrate to urban areas for improving the incomes as living in rural areas is becoming very, very difficult. And agriculture, young people don't want to take anymore to. That's the kind of situation we are reaching. In fact, we need to become conscious of the fact that today peasants are, owning small pieces of land. They need to be brought together. Cooperation, cooperatives are needed at all levels, for input production, for handling of outputs, and even maintenance of ecosystem services and so on, etc., maintenance of ecological functions. For example, if you want to manage water, you can't manage only on the farm. You have to manage in a whole watershed as far as concerned. You need to actually create new social carriers of technological alternatives which are today accessible and available.
Collective experience always are better. I mean, in Brazil we are starting to getting a bigger scale. We have one experience which is 4,000 hectares. It's quite a big scale. We are producing a collective farming with around 400 settlers, the guys who already be settlement, and they are having one big cooperatives, and we are trying to sell in the market. The production area like rice, cocoa, organic cocoa, coffee, and vegetables. Yeah, and then we have a more bigger scale. Some beans also to me. All these good experiences are collective. The best experience all are collectives, because when you are collective, the risks are less. You can make better investments, and also you can have more technical. It's more easily to have a technical assistant. It's more easily to take a credit, because we believe it's not only got the land, have many issues that we have to solve. For example, rural areas for us must have space for youth, must have a culture, access for culture, must have, as like we are doing international relations. So we have also to globalize our homeness, our good experience.
Adjustments that were made in the mainstream agriculture from even green movements in Europe, as well as from the side of green movements in Europe as well as in India, was the practice of organic agriculture, which was a case basically for input change. That you shift from chemical inputs to biological inputs, for example. Don't use any more chemical inputs. But it didn't really focus on the question of intensification of the maintenance of ecological functions, soil and water. The ecology was not maintained in that particular. It was not the focus, it was not the target. It was a question of merely input change. Agroecological approaches aim at, in fact, the intensification of the maintenance of these very particular functions. You start doing with that how would soil and water would be impacted in a particular area when you choose a particular cropping system, for example. But you deal with them in a manner that, through the cropping system as it's diversified and integrated and intensified, that these external inputs are not eliminated, but they are minimized as far as you use them. And much of the inputs external inputs also, which you use them, and which you can use them and should use them, and they're needed, they also are produced locally within the sphere. So the possibilities of rural non-farm increase tremendously in the agroecological approach. Today, when you have to implement in the new context opportunities for landless and labor, you need to combine farm and rural non-farm. Earlier, the farm and rural non-farm in the Green Revolution happened in a manner that the rural non-farm came on account of the fact that the ancillaries to the large industry, tractors, for example, in Punjab, it's the mechanization which was the main source of whatever rural non-farm operations came in the thing. Mechanization, whether it is in threshing, whether it is in tractor, plowing, whether harvesting, they gave opportunities for rural non-farm. Whereas in agroecological approaches, on the input side also you can get the rural non-farm possibilities like biofertilizer, biopesticides, agro-processing, apart from mechanization, etc., which was the only opportunity, and agro-processing was another one, but largely that was also in the hands of the large capital and so on, etc. Here in this case, since you have the multiple diversified crop system to which the farmers have been locally used, agro-processing techniques are known, millets can be grown in this particular kind of approach far more easily. You can use, earlier Punjab used to have jowar and bajra and so on, etc. Today it does not have. Today you have only rice and wheat crop rotation. Agroecological approaches have tried looking at precisely many of the grains which were considered at one time minor grains, which were not anymore considered remunerative. It brings them back, even it's better for the consumers.
2/3 of our population still living in rural areas, 2/3 of this population being poor, which means close to 650 million people living in poverty in the rural areas. Now, job creation is clearly necessary, but where are these jobs going to come from? We know that agriculture sector is saturated. There's no new jobs in agriculture. Employment is not increasing. If people migrate from rural areas to industries and urban areas, you have this phenomenon called jobless growth, where you get economic growth, but it's not creating many jobs. So if jobs are not being created in urban industrial areas, and if agriculture is not creating new jobs, then our belief is that new job creation must come from the rural non-farm sector. That is to say, from industries located in rural areas.
That means 5 members.
How long it takes to build
There's a whole variety of produce in the rural areas which are either not being used today, or if they are, for which the rural people get very little return. Excellent rural enterprises can be made, and examples of these are being shown in this workshop, which show how rural groups can get together and form enterprises to create jobs and incomes in rural areas from these produce. Some examples of rural non-farm produce are in leather, in pottery and ceramics, in fruits and vegetables and processed products, in oils from a variety of trees and berries, fiber products, products from the rural areas which bear saponins used to make soapy products, and many others.
നല്ല പലഹാരം ഉണ്ടാക്കാൻ ഇഷ്ടമാണ്. പലഹാരം ഉണ്ടാക്കുന്നതൊക്കെ ഞാൻ തന്നെ മിക്കതും. ഞങ്ങൾ ഇതിക്ക് മുന്നേ ഞാൻ ജോലിക്കൊന്നും പോയിക്കൊടുന്നില്ല, വീട്ടിലിരിക്കുകയായിരുന്നു. അവിടെ നിന്ന് ഇവിടെ കോസ്റ്റ്ഫോർഡിൽ ഈ സ്ത്രീശക്തി ക്യാൻറ്റീൻ തുടങ്ങി ഞങ്ങളവിടെ ട്രെയിനിങ് കഴിച്ച്. അപ്പം ഇപ്പോൾ ഞങ്ങൾ 13 പേരായി. ആദ്യം 12 പേരായി, 6 പേരായി, ഇപ്പോൾ 13 ആൾ. 13 വർഷമായി ഇവിടെ തുടങ്ങിയിട്ട്. തീർച്ചയായിട്ടും നല്ല സഹായം തന്നെയാണ്. ഞങ്ങൾക്ക് ഇവിടെ നിന്ന് കിട്ടുന്നത് നല്ല സഹായമല്ലേ. ഒരു ജോലിക്കും പോകാതെ ഞങ്ങൾ ഇവിടെ വന്ന് ഇങ്ങനെ ജോലി ചെയ്ത് അത് ഇവിടെ നിന്ന് കിട്ടുന്ന വരുമാനം ഞങ്ങൾക്ക് നല്ല സഹായം തന്നെയാണ്. 2 മക്കളെ കല്യാണം കഴിച്ചു കൊടുത്തു, മോൻ പഠിക്കുന്നു, അതൊക്കെ സഹായം തന്നെയാണ്.
in Delhi today, for example, you get these little statues of Ganesha made out of clay. Today, close to 50% of Ganeshas sold in the Delhi market are made in China, and they are not made in clay. The sufferers are not the big industries, the Ambanis and the Tatas, they are not being affected. But small, unorganized sector, small enterprises, they are taking a big hit in this. I'm not making this point in order to stop international trade. I don't think I'm saying that at all. But what I'm saying is, Indian small enterprises, enterprises in the unorganized sector need to be made more competitive in terms of quality and in terms of productivity and standards, where we are taking a beating right now.
First of all, the modern technologies are increasingly labor displacing. People are not required, and that means in our society, large majority of the people are poor. Secondly, the energy intensity of modern technology is now reaching alarming levels. As you can see, the climatic changes that we are having in the last 20 years, we have had climatic changes more frequently than the previous 200 years. So, carbon emission, increasing use of energy that emits carbon. So, there is a global relevance to what we are doing. At the same time, it has a local need and a local context.
Energy is a major issue for the society now. We don't have enough of what we want in the right form. Apart from that, climate change has been very evident these days, and there is no doubt that production of energy as well as its wasteful use has been responsible for such a fast change in the climate and its impacts. Choices of what form of energy, how much, where, etc. have to be decided by the people who are the real users of it. Another thing is our dependence now, the whole world, 70% of energy is based on fossil fuel. From this point of view, we have to now shift to an energy system which is not carbon based. That is where renewable energy makes some sense. And there the advantage is that we are not actually digging up and taking a fixed capital which is under the ground, which could be exhausted.
An alternate approach and an alternate technology.
When we go to international negotiations on climate, the big issue there, and India is the biggest champion there, is India demands equity. That in order that there should be control of this problem, America and the European countries should consume less energy, so that India and Brazil and other countries developing countries can consume more, so that we ultimately come to equal position. We are very brave when it comes to international negotiations and arguing with the Americans and the Europeans. You must consume less so that we can consume more. But in our own country, when are we going to start saying, let the rich consume less so that the poor can consume more? Which sections of society are going to sacrifice what? Is there not a way in our country to say, if we produce more energy, let it first go to those who have no electricity? Equity needs to be the yardstick by which we measure all development and every further development, because this aspiration that we all talk about can be a dangerous double-edged weapon, because one man's aspiration is the other man's doom. Just like the aspirations of the West has been our problem.
I was a nuclear engineer. I had a PhD in nuclear engineering. I worked in the Bhabha Atomic Research Center for about 18 years, jumped out of it because I became convinced that nuclear energy is not a desirable form of energy. But to maintain a quality level, you require a minimum amount of energy. Solar is my bet, supplemented by biomass. Solar energy I have not yet come because I cannot, even today I cannot afford that much money to invest because I have not earned that much money.
Renewable energies depend upon what energy comes every day and passes, like sunshine, like wind. What conversion that is going to happen tomorrow is we are going to have distributed generation and distributed use. There is a slogan which Kerala coined 2 years back, every house a powerhouse. That means you put on a solar panel above and you have a, but there is a meaning in it that your required energy you produce here. So then there is no question of this kind of labor relations and exploitations and all coming.
As a household owner or a housekeeper, if I have got a biogas system and I come to a conclusion that very difficult to maintain. I cannot go to 5 places and collect that, but somebody else, I will pay for it. So instead of I pay for LPG, I will pay for my biogas provider. So biogas providing and maintaining will have to be a company. A company means about 3-4 people or 4 or 5 people, a joint liability group can do it to service about 100 and 150 households.
Alternative organizational forms basically suggest that there should be involvement of the stakeholders, and in most cases the stakeholders are the people. So for example, if you take domestic energy issues, biogas, okay, you can have individual biogases or you can have community level biogas, but to manage that you need people's organizations, you need cooperatives, you need community based organizations. So it can also bring in people in a more cooperative mode, and that cooperation is out of necessity. So if I have to interact with you on the basis of my economic requirement, it will have a much better social solidarity than just wishing for, okay, let's all be together, go and shout slogans. That is not a real cooperation. What we now experience is the market, which means the companies. Companies, often small companies, are devoured by the big companies. So everything becomes concentrated and you become a dependent. You ultimately reduce yourself to the status of a consumer. So that is why we emphasizing and discussing various kinds of alternative organizations or people's organizations where a lot of experiments have been made and a lot of group farming approaches, community level biogas plants, various other non-farm activities, labor banks, and a whole range of things which can really develop locally. And that will very much fits in what we once thought a utopian Gandhian idea, but I think now it comes to it that that is what we really need.
അറിവിൻ്റെ പൂമരം അറിവിൻ്റെ പൂമരം അജ്ഞാനപ്പുഴ നീന്തി അക്കരെ ചെല്ലുമ്പോൾ അജ്ഞാനപ്പുഴ നീന്തി